Hello, my name is Dior Ashley Brown, engagement intern at NCRP, and we just released a new online interactive data tool and research brief called Won't You Be My Neighbor? Local Foundations, Immigrants and Refugee Populations. It analyzes local to local funding for immigrant and refugee justice. Our goal is for this data to empower local groups and funders with a shared view of where they stand and information to move forward together. This is a part of our broader movement investment project to move money to movements, build nonprofit capacity to engage with philanthropy, and support funders to be better allies.
So last year we launched this initiative with our allies in the pro-immigrant, pro-refugee movement. In future years, you'll see us continue this work and expand to additional progressive movements as well. But when we launched this data last year, we saw that nationally, when you look at foundation funding, only about 1% of that funding tends to go to benefit immigrants and refugees, and way less than that goes to benefit this movement. That philanthropy spends more on leisure sports than they do on the pro-immigrant, pro-refugee movement. So it's very clear that often the priorities of the philanthropy follows where folks who are the richest and have the most privilege have the most interest. So as we released that data and worked with our partners to kind of shift conversations at the national level, something we heard again and again is that there's a lot of money at the local level. And so folks asked us, hey, can you tell us what local funders are doing? And can you maybe say something first? Because that'll help give us a little cover to have the conversations that we want to have. Stephanie, if you'll go to the next slide. We're going to show this dashboard with you in just a minute, but to kind of get this in your head, here's some of the big takeaways. So, after the election in 2016, a lot of foundations at the local level said, hey, maybe we should be funding more in immigrant and refugee communities. Maybe we should be providing more funding to the pro-immigrant, pro-refugee movement. And we did see an increase from the 5 years before that. But even with that increase, philanthropy at the local level has a long way to go. In the most recent year, that we have data for, which is 2018, we know that the local foundation grants kind of benefiting their communities in that state, we know that only 1% of that local grant making went to benefit immigrants and refugees directly, and only 0.4% of the local grant making that local foundations do to benefit their state. Only about 0.4% of that local grant making went to the local pro-immigrant, pro-refugee movement community in each state. And as you'll see in a minute when Stephanie shares screens, we also know that each state's 10 largest grant makers could be doing a lot more. So with that, I'm going to hand things over to Stephanie, who's going to show you this tool and walk through it.
All right, great. Thanks, Ben. So I am just going to show you really quickly what the entire tool that we've been working on looks like. There are a lot of features to this. There's a lot of interactivity. But I will just quickly go over the main features of what this tool includes and how you can use it. So when you go onto our website, this is what you'll see when you go onto our page. It is a digital dashboard showing all local funding information for all 50 states. So obviously it's a little bit small right now if you're looking at the shared screen, but this is how you can scroll. I'm going to zoom in now so that you can see with a little bit more detail. So there are two main parts to this tool. A national view, which is this top portion here, where you can look at different metrics for each of the 50 states side by side. Each of the metrics, there are 4 total, are on the drop-down menu on the left side over here. And then at the very bottom, there is, once you click on a state on the top portion, right now it's defaulted to District of Columbia. And it will take a few moments to load. It will highlight a state profile that goes into more detailed data below. So going back to the top, like I said, there are 4 metrics that you can use to compare data. The first one is the percentage of total local funding that benefits the pro-immigrant and refugee movement. And then the second is percent of total funding in each state that benefits the immigrant and refugee population and communities, broader than just the movement organizations. And then the 2 bottom metrics include a comparison between the share of the total funding, like these two, compared to what the actual immigrant population in the state is. So you'll be able to see all of those metrics on a visual of the United States here. And then at the very upper right side, this box will tell you the number of states in which the total foundation funding has reached a certain threshold. So you'll see that for our movement funding metric, that threshold was 0.4%, and 8 foundations in 2017 and 8 states had foundations that met the 0.4%. For each view, you'll also be able to look at the top states in terms of how they were funding, as well as the bottom states. So the top part of this shows you the most recent 2 years, 2017 and 2018, and then you can compare it to the previous 5 years before that, from 2012 to 2016. So going back down to the state view, this is where you can kind of dive in a little bit farther and look at specific information for your state. You'll be able to see their total funding in the state between the 2 sets of years, again, 2017 to 2018, and then the previous 5 years of 2012 to 2016. You'll see how much of that total funding went to benefit immigrant and refugee populations, and then how much of that total share of funding went to benefit movements or movement organizations. Below that, you'll see population stats, such as the percent population of the state that is foreign-born, how many children on an average are in an immigrant family in that state. You'll see also a couple statistics on what that kind of quantify what the threat facing immigrant communities are, including how many people in the state are in immigrant detention as of most recent year of data, as well as a number of deportations that has happened, with a comparison again between 2017 and 2018, and then for 2012 and 2016. Scrolling down even further, you'll be able to see those top 10 funders that Ben referenced a little bit earlier. And again, sometimes this data will refresh while you're in the middle of viewing. So these top 10 foundations were gathered by looking at their total funding in a state, in the state that they're located in between 2012 and 2018. And then we also looked at the same metrics, how much of that total funding went to benefit the pro-immigrant and pro-refugee movement, as well as how much of that percentage of funding went to benefit the immigrant and refugee populations. So you'll be able to compare 4 different views again. You'll be able to see the most recent 2 years of 2017 and 2018. Let's look at that view. You'll see those metrics: total funding, percent towards the movement, and then percent towards the immigrant and refugee populations. You'll be able to compare the metrics of percent funding towards the movement between the 2 sets of years, as well as funding for immigrant and refugee populations. And then finally, if you want to view all of that data for the both sets of years side by side, you can hit that cross tab, and it will give you one giant sheet. And then on the left side, we have a list of NCRP nonprofit members that benefit each state. So even though they might be, you'll see in District of Columbia, there's a pretty long list, but even if they're located or headquartered in District of Columbia, we also added them to the states where they work or serve in. So again, this is just a really quick overview of everything that you will see. And then finally, if you wanted to print, there's an option at the very top right-hand corner where you can print out an image or print and download a PDF.
What do we want people to do? We urge local philanthropy to unite with local groups to chart a path forward toward more equitable, proportional levels of support for immigrants, refugees, and movement groups in their communities. We hope that this data not only deepens current conversations, but also spark new action around what it means to support local immigrant and refugee communities. Please navigate our new data tool and go to ncrp.org to get in contact with us. Thank you so much.